On a bright, clear Saturday last August, under an infernal high-noon sun, we took to the streets and made ourselves known to our oppressors. Members and representatives of Capital People First, South Area People First, the Supported Life Institute, and the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network of Sacramento joined a nationwide group of over 80 protests of Goodwill Industries by the National Federation of the Blind. Goodwill provides jobs for people with disabilities in its stores and in children's workshops, and in many cases, it pays them dirt under the guise of sub-minimum wage. Wages for workers with disabilities in some Goodwill projects have been reported as low as 22 cents per hour, while Goodwill's CEO, also a person with a disability, makes over $200 an hour or $500,000 a year. We, the disability community, a community of the just and the powerful, shall not stand for that sort of hypocrisy when it comes to how much we should be paid. So what is sub-minimum wage exactly? To understand how terrible it is, we need to look at the concept of minimum wage. Minimum wage means that all workers are guaranteed a certain amount of money for the work they do. This is a way that they can have enough money so they can survive. Sub-minimum wage is less than minimum wage, that's what it means. And it's often much, much less. California's minimum wage is $8 an hour, several times more than some of our paychecks. In this country, we tend to say that the harder someone works, or the more they work, the more we should pay them. When ableist lawmakers and business people combine this idea with the idea that we may not be able to work as quickly as people without disabilities, the result is that paying us less than minimum wage, less than what our honest work deserves, seems ethical to people in power. What these people don't seem to realize is that sub-minimum wage keeps us in the kind of poverty they're trying to see us come out of. They don't realize that sub-minimum wage devalues the work they want us to do to keep us out of institutions and keeps us dependent on the government for welfare that we could be saving for others who need it. They don't realize that having disabilities should never be an obstacle to the standard of living that minimum wage is meant to provide to all Americans. They don't realize that all their talk about how efficient someone is dehumanizes them. Just as a woman is more than her body and people of color are more than their skin, you are more than your output. They don't realize that we don't live to work, we work to live, because we are not machines designed only to do a tedious job for someone else's benefit. We are living, breathing humans. And without a living wage, only welfare or outright begging can help us live and breathe. And in spite of all that, in some cases, paying workers with disabilities sub-minimum wage is perfectly legal. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 has a section, Section 14C, which allows employers with special wage certificates to pay workers with disabilities, 300,000 to 400,000 of them, less than minimum wage, all without breaking the law. That is how serious our situation is. The false, disgusting idea that you are a fraction of a worker who deserves a fraction of a living wage for whole days of work is written into the law of the country that dares to call itself the freest in the world. To add insult to injury, some people, including Goodwill and other sub-minimum wage employers, and even some people with disabilities, will tell you that sub-minimum wage is a good thing because if we were paid minimum wage, we would lose our SSI and medical benefits. But it turns out they got their math wrong. In California, minimum wage is $8 an hour, as we know, which for a 40-hour work week and 52 weeks gives us $16,640 per year. By these same calculations, the amount of money you have to make to stop qualifying for SSI in California if you live alone is $27,925 per year, or about $13.30 per hour. And that's a lot more per hour than 8. This threshold actually gets higher if you live with more people. Plus, Medi-Cal's buy-in program is available for workers with disabilities who make $45,924 or more per year, but who have less than $2,000 in savings. So the numbers speak for themselves. You will not lose your benefits if you earn minimum wage or even a little more, because minimum wage is actually far below the threshold where SSI benefits cut off completely. So, with nothing to lose, what can we do about minimum wage? That's what the national protests and boycott are all about. We advertised our protest on Facebook, Twitter, and email lists, contacting everyone we could to make sure we got a good turnout. As I said, it was one of 80 protests across the nation put on by chapters of the ASAN, the NFB, and other disability organizations. Also, at the national level, there is a House of Representatives bill, H.R. 3086, or the Fair Wages for Workers with Disabilities Act of 2011. While the bill has been sitting in a House subcommittee since November, the National Council of Disability has recommended that President Barack Obama support it. It would phase out Section 14C over 6 years, giving employers of workers with disabilities time to transition into paying fair wages without going bankrupt. The bill's sponsor in Congress is Representative Cliff Stearns of Florida. It also has 81 co-sponsors or other representatives who support the bill, whom you can contact to show your support. At the local level, the NFB has been issuing a boycott of Goodwill stores and encouraging people not to donate anything to them. We can continue to boycott our local Goodwill organization, Goodwill Sacramento Valley and Northern Nevada, and continue to spread the word about minimum wage so that our friends do not buy into our oppression until our local Goodwill chapters renounce 14C status or until the Fair Wages Act passes, guaranteeing fair wages for all. Now, of course, we cannot stop at our August protests, and we cannot stop at Goodwill. In California alone, there are 164 organizations that have special wage certificates, including 5 regional Goodwill headquarters, 7 ARC chapters, and other familiar names such as Easter Seals, In Alliance, and Pride Industries. I know that we can generate some interesting ideas about how to contact them and other minimum wage employers, and perhaps even return to the streets for more acts of civil disobedience. Because these employers like to act like they're your only hope for a job. A Goodwill counter flyer handed out at some of the national protests points out the horrifying number of people with disabilities who are unemployed, which is a serious issue, and uses it as an excuse to say that we should be grateful for any menial, ill-paid job we get, that pennies on the dollar are better than nothing. Well, as free and equal citizens of the United States of America, we demand better than nothing. And there are people who are willing to give that to us. Many companies do not pay minimum wage to their workers with disabilities. Even some Goodwill chapters lack 14C status, which means Goodwill as a whole is in a perfect position to set an example for its peers by renouncing minimum wage and is a perfect target for our actions. I'm not saying that it's easy to find work or keep work outside of organizations that specifically try to employ us. It isn't, especially in this ableist world of ours. But I have faith that if we come together and attack ableism on all fronts within all workplaces and employment systems, we will get the pay we deserve. No matter how much extra support we need, no matter how passable we are for normal, no matter how visible our disabilities are, no matter how our motor skills or people skills or other skills match up to our able-bodied, able-minded, able-pocketbook peers. We are people, and in America, all people deserve equitable pay. This is your money. And in spite of what we're told about the economy, there is enough to go around. The problem is that so much of it rests in the hands of an elite few. Why stand around while a handful of CEOs buy speedboats and second homes and mink coats with your money, who twist your truth to their own ends when you can join your brothers, sisters, and children and write disability history?